So what is going on, everyone? Fernando Silva here with another video, and before we get started, leave a comment down below. Did you guys upgrade to iPadOS 15, to iOS 15? Let me know your thoughts. Was it worth all the hype? Did you enjoy all the new features? And what's the number one feature that you've used so far with iPadOS 15? Always curious to find out exactly how you guys are experiencing everything for the first time. But in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the iPad mini 6 because I pre-ordered it the moment that I could after the event. And I'm really excited to get it in the studio on Friday because I think it's going to be an absolute game changer for the iPad lineup. That iPad mini 6 is going to be pristine. But let's talk about it a little bit more. Let's get into it. So for those that don't know, I want to run through the specs very quickly. So the iPad mini 6 is just a shrunken down iPad Air 4. So they got rid of that old legacy design. They got rid of the chin and the forehead and the home button. They now have uniform bezels throughout. The home button got moved to the actual lock button. So that's where Touch ID is going to live now, which is very, very cool. And it got that nice uniform, unibody, kind of like industrial design that made everybody fall in love with the iPad Pro all over again. So now you have the iPad Pros, the iPad Air, and the iPad Mini with that new design language. And then with the iPad 9 or the standard iPad, keeping that old legacy design language with the physical home button. One thing that I actually noticed after the keynote and after the fact was that they actually moved the position of the volume rocker. So the volume keys actually got moved to the top of the iPad mini. I don't really know why. People are saying it's because of the fact that it's going to have Apple Pencil 2 support, but at the same time, Apple Pencil 2 only charges on one side of the iPad, so maybe on the left side of the iPad you could have still put the actual volume rockers, but maybe it had something to do with the antenna bands and 5G and the Wi-Fi bands. Who knows? But now you have the lock and Touch ID button on the top right, and then you have the volume rockers on the iPad mini also, but on the top left. So a little bit of a different design, something that we're not used to, but let's see how people kind of adapt to it and see if people kind of get frustrated or if it's something that they just pick up immediately. And then in terms of the screen, we got an all new screen. It now went from 7.9 to 8.3 inches, but keeping the same exact form factor and keeping the same footprint. And that 8.3 inch screen is actually now a liquid retina display. They brought that over from the original iPad Pros, the iPad Pro 3rd gen, and the iPad Air 4. It's still a 60Hz display, so nothing too crazy. You're not getting ProMotion or anything like that, but you are getting that nice liquid retina display, which has been so tried and true since the iPad Pro 3rd generation. So you get about 5 or maybe even 600 nits of peak brightness, which is great to have, especially because this is going to be, or at least it looks like it's going to be, an outdoor use type of iPad. And then spec-wise, internally, they did add that A15 Bionic. Originally, Apple didn't mention anything on stage, and I think the reason they didn't mention it or hype it up was because they didn't want to cannibalize iPad Air 4 sales or say that it's going to be more powerful than the iPad Air 4, because ideally it should be. You know, the A15 Bionic is inside the iPad mini 6. In the iPad Air 4, we have the A14 Bionic. So now, unless you have the Pro models with the M1 chips, it looks like the iPad mini 6 is the most powerful iPad in the iPad lineup, which is kind of interesting. And this actually happened last year, or I believe maybe 2 years ago, whenever the iPad Air 4 released. They released it with the A14 chip, while the iPad Pro still had the A13Z chip, I believe it was. So everybody was like, oh, whoa, 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 is the iPad Air 4 now more powerful because it has the A14? But the A12Z still had an extra GPU core, so it still made it a little bit better, a little bit faster for multi-core tasks. But overall, now you have the A15 Bionic in the iPad mini, which makes it more powerful than the more expensive and the larger iPad Air 4. So that's something to really take note of, because I think Apple will at some point refresh the iPad Air 4, and very, very quickly they're going to just throw that A15 Bionic in there. And then the last physical upgrades that you see are to the camera sensors. So on the rear, we got a new 12 megapixel shooter with autofocus and also the new flash on theirs. And then on the front, we actually got a 12 megapixel ultra wide selfie camera. So now it comes with center stage built in. You get a 120-degree viewing angle, which is beautiful to have. So again, this is supposed to be a mobile kind of video chat, leisure, content consumption, get work done, portable machine. And that's what it is. So now we got the specs and the design and all that good stuff out of the way. I did want to mention as to why I personally got it, because I plan on keeping this iPad mini at least for a while, and I do see how it's going to fit not only my workflow, but in my daily life and all that good stuff. Because a lot of people are saying, if you are getting the iPad mini 4, why not just spend another $100 and get an iPad Air 4? It's a little bit bigger, or why not even spend a little bit more and get the 11-inch iPad Pro with the M1 and Thunderbolt and all that good stuff. And the iPad mini is kind of in this weird situation where it's smaller than the iPad Airs, bigger than the iPhone 11 Pro Max or the iPhone 13 Pro Max at this point. So it's kind of in this real weird middle ground where, who is it for, right? Like, what is it going to be used for? So for me personally, I can see this being kind of like a portable powerhouse. So I can see myself using this to edit some thumbnails in Affinity Photo, maybe make some quick edits in LumaFusion. Because remember, it's not like we're getting a watered down chipset. We still have an A15 Bionic in there, which is going to be powerful enough to handle those high intensity tasks. Maybe not on a multi-core level and multi-thread count, but single core tasks it's going to fly through that with that A15 chip. So like I said, it's going to be powerful enough to handle those intense tasks that your iPad Pros and your iPad Air 4 are handling because, again, it's still running iPadOS 15, it still has the latest chipset that Apple has to offer, so it's got to be able to run every single application in the App Store. But aside from those like work and to-do like kind of tasks that you want to do with the iPad mini, for me personally, it's going to be an absolute leisure device, right? Because I've been in situations where my 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which I have over here, is almost too tedious and too big and too heavy to handle, especially just in tablet mode, right? That 12.9-inch iPad is big. It's a big behemoth, especially because I have a nice little thin Pitaka case, which even though it is thin and minimal and very light, it still adds a little bit more weight. And you can't really like hold it with one hand. If you lay off to your side, it's not really comfortable. If you try to hold it over your head while in bed, eventually your arms get tired. I don't care how strong you are, you're gonna get tired holding that iPad Pro. So I think that's where this is going to step in. This iPad mini 6 is gonna step in and kind of bridge that gap between, hey, my iPhone screen is just a little too small for me to really enjoy content, especially at home. And my 12.9-inch iPad Pro, I don't really want to use it as a laptop to consume content. And the tablet mode is a little too big. So here comes this iPad mini to kind of fix that issue. But then there's the other use cases. I can see this being an absolute game changer for people, right? So for instance, I've mentioned that this is going to be for that person that wants to give their kid for a 1-hour car ride a distraction, just to throw it over there for them. Like I said, it's going to be a leisure content consumption device. But I see this also being used out in the field, right? Like maybe for an engineer that has to make sure that those 5G towers are set up correctly with a little bit of AR, like Apple kind of represented. But then also in the medical field, right? For doctors, nurses, hospital staff, to carry around such a portable and powerful device to be able to get all the information of their patients at a glance, be able to take notes, be able to connect to their internet and things like that. So instead of using like their personal iPhone or maybe a big, nurse cart that they have to push around everywhere, now they have an iPad mini that literally fits in a pocket, of a doctor's jacket or a nurse's jacket or things like that. So that's why I see it being used in the professional world. These very like quick tasks that are being done in intense environments like a doctor's office, like a hospital, like an engineer room, right? Like out in the field, like I was mentioning. So overall, I think this is going to be a big game changer because it's going to, I think, hurt the sales of the iPad Air and the iPad Pro 11-inch a little bit. But overall, this iPad mini is going to be a great package, especially if you go with that 256 gigabyte model, which is what I went with. But the last thing I'm going to mention is the one that I went with. I just got the purple variant, no 5G. I got the 256 gigabyte because I wanted that extra storage just in case. But that's the one that I'm going to ride with, and that's what I think is going to be an awesome purchase for a lot of people. But overall, really happy with that iPad mini. Excited to get it into the studio, see what all the hype is about, see if it's worth the extra money. Because again, people are forgetting about the fact that the iPad mini started at $400 before this new redesign. So the iPad mini was $399, but now the entry-level iPad mini is $499. So let's see if Apple can get away with charging an extra $100 just for a redesign. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment down below. Are you guys picking one up? Are you guys enjoying iPadOS 15? Are you guys going to wait to see what people are going to review and how people actually use the iPad mini 5 or the iPad mini 6 for that matter? But that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more. We got the iPhones coming. We got the iPad mini coming. So definitely subscribe. Until next time. Peace.